Welcome to Ungoogleable. Today I'm sitting down with my good buddy Joe Ombrello. The last time I had Joe on the podcast, he had just moved from Ohio to Arizona and totally switched careers and started a new journey. Joey.
What's up, buddy?
To the show, my man.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Great, man.
So I say we just start there. We have a lot to talk about. In LA right now. Last time I saw you were in Catalina Island. So what's going on?
Man, just trying to get everything developed. So, I started the podcast. I'm up to 20 episodes now. I got the Human EQ8Ion Wellness Center up and running. So we're offering sensory deprivation. We have yoga, meditation, wellness coaching. Working on another nonprofit with a bunch of at-risk youth, which is called the Wellness EQ8Ion Project. And just trying to grind through those things and get them all up and running. Okay, yeah. So let's recap some of this stuff. So the podcast, Human EQ8Ion, I think I was episode 3. 3. Yeah, so you've done 20. The Wellness Center, yep, where you do work with at-risk youths. Now, all of this collectively, though, you started this just in this move cross-country when you got to Arizona. Yeah, so it wasn't even on the horizon 8 months ago. And remind people what you were doing 8 months ago and where you were living. Oh, yeah, so I was still in Ohio, back in my hometown near Youngstown, and so I was working as a police officer. I was on the street crimes unit, working with the SRT team, and just kind of got burnt out with it and didn't kind of like the direction my path was going. And so I sat down and started reconfiguring some things and made some different plans and made some action. And so I loaded everything up, moved out to Arizona, and started everything about 4 months ago now. Yeah, we come from the same town. We've known each other since we were children. What do you say, and it's something you and I always talk about, but let's focus on the action bit. Not only having the idea and the awareness that you want to make a change, that you need to make a change, but then taking that huge risk and actually doing it. Yeah, and a lot of times people think it's a risk, but sometimes it's not a risk, right? Where you're at is already unfulfilling. So how much of it is really a risk if you're just getting away from that and going to do something more meaningful? Okay, I hope a lot of our buddies or people that we know in Youngstown are listening to this with this next question though. When you went to Yuma, how many people did you know? None. You knew none? Nobody, yeah. And what did you take? Just loaded up my truck with the trailer and towed it out there, right? So I got rid of almost everything that I had except for like things that were actually meaningful to me. So obviously I kept all my firearms, I kept my hunting equipment, I kept some like personal knickknacks, souvenirs from the military, some law enforcement stuff. But otherwise I got rid of everything and just restarted. So we talk about taking action, we talk about the importance of taking risks. Now talk about once you have these things figured out, the importance of creating a system and then working on it, and especially working through those moments where you think it might not work out because it's still in its first, 6 months? 4, yeah. Yeah, 4 months. Well, the actual physical center's only been open 2 months. And talk about the pressures so far that you've been dealing with. Just, base pressure of trying to market it and get people interested. And when it's a new concept in a new area and you don't know people and you don't have a network and you have to create that whole new network, just trying to make the connections so that people can see the value in something. And so a lot of times people won't see the value in something that you can see for them, right? So you can see the potential of somebody or you can see the value in what they could become, but maybe a lot of times they don't see it in themselves. And so trying to get them to become aware of it, because awareness is key. And so awareness ties back into the intention. So what is their intention for their life? And then having them become aware of how that can correlate to help them fix it, right? So if we get back into the 8 dimensions of wellness, which is the whole framework of Human EQ8Ion, right, is trying to capitalize on each one of those so that you get the people to see where they're at in each one, how they can maintain balance, how they become aware of the things they're doing that are destructive, and then moving forward. So the 8 pillars of wellness are these things that, because the Human EQ8Ion, your brand, your wellness center, your podcast, all the work that you do, are these pillars that you've come up with yourself, or is this part of something that you've read? You're always reading philosophy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So maybe share some of those important components, pick out a few of those 8 where you feel that most people are lacking on. Yeah, it's a hard one because everybody's so different, right? Mm. So that's why it's the Human EQ8Ion, is because everybody's equation is different, figure that out, right? What to add in, what to subtract. Yeah, absolutely. And so, I can't say that there's one per se that most people are lacking. I guess in America, you could say the physical side, because a lot of people really struggle with that. So their nutrition, sleep, rest and recovery and physical exercise is less than ideal. But, it's all of them, right? You have your financial and intellectual and occupational, spiritual, social, emotional, environmental, and all those things integrate together to create balance. And that's what your overall encompassing wellness is. And so I didn't necessarily develop it. There's multiple models that already exist. But what I kind of did is just took it and then kind of refined it to fit into what I saw. So between being a military officer, a therapist, a social worker, working in the schools, owning a CrossFit gym, being a police officer, right? I've done all those things, and I've seen people in each one of those who are lacking, right? And there's a general consensus in all of those that those people are all out of balance.
Yeah, so man, you've always done a lot of stuff. So you got here last night. You drove from Arizona to meet me and everyone else in LA.
Yeah.
You left. Just share with us when you woke up Friday morning, what your day looked like. Because a big excuse that I get from either potential clients or friends or people in my network is that I don't have time.
Right.
I don't have enough time to do this. So someone like yourself, share what that day looked like. The time, start with when you woke up, what you did, all the way up leading to when you jumped in your car and drove to LA.
Yeah, so most days I get up right around 8, usually before. And then I'll get up, I'll get all my posts done for all my social media stuff, right? So I got the wellness center, I got the podcast, I got the programming site, which I didn't even mention with the programming that I do. I have to get all those daily posts in. So I get those in. I usually go get my coffee. I'll kind of relax. I do therapy notes from the day before. So I did all my therapy notes, got those done. So it takes me up to about 10 o'clock in the morning. Then I taught a yoga class at 10:30. Right. And then after that, then I had to go do a couple errands for the business. So I got a couple things done. I had to buy some stuff for the facility. After that, then I started therapy sessions at 12 o'clock. So I had a session at 12, a session at 1, a session at 2, a session at 3. Then I had a group at 4, I had another group at 5. And then I hit the road to come here.
And everyone listening to this, give us advice on productivity. I mean, it's something you've never struggled with. What allows you? Is it simply a mindset thing? Do you have little tasks that you do? Is it a recovery thing? Or share insights on this.
I mean, it's all of it, right? So if you look at a lot of people who are busy, so there's a difference between busy and productive, right? You could be busy because you're not prioritizing things, you're not calculating your schedule out right, and that's what kind of throws you out of balance. So if you don't have an intention behind each thing that you're doing, and there's too many things on your plate, then you need to start cutting stuff back. Or you need to figure out how you can do multiple things at once. And so for me, it's prioritizing everything that's important, keeping those in check. And then also at the end of the day, as you know, I do yoga and meditate every night right before bed. And so that's the thing that helps me reset every day. So I don't need a vacation. I don't need to take breaks because I'm reset. Plus I'm doing things that I already want to do. So everything that I do in my life is something that I truly believe in, which fits into my spiritual wellness, which helps me then grind away.
Where do you find that when you say you have a client and you're talking to them like this and you already know their needs, you know what their goals are, they're just giving you excuse after excuse. What do you melt that down to the average person? Is this something, does it come down to the person who's not, is it because they're not happy? Is it because they're not doing something that they love? Is it a skill set issue? Sometimes,
yeah. So if you look at intellectual wellness, I mean, the subcomponents of that are knowledge, wisdom, creativity, and skill set, right? So if you don't have skills, what are you going to do? Probably not much of anything.
Well, you're going to develop them. You're going to learn something.
But if you don't have them yet, you either have to develop them or you're not going to do anything.
So is this a vulnerability issue then, or is this that would then require you to face yourself and identify what you need to work on?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't want to take the deep introspection, right? So they create this facade of who they are and they like to believe that that's them. But then if you can then take your values and you align them to your actions, then you can see if they actually correlate. And do they? And a lot of people don't. And that's where they don't want to start introspecting more, because what happens? Then they fall into depression or anxiety or something else like that, right? And so a lot of people will kind of just escape it through doing other stuff. So instead of sitting down and having that introspection and being real with themselves and not bullshitting, they'll be like, oh, yeah, it's good enough. And then they just walk away. But the whole key of wellness coaching is then you confront that and then you tell the people like, hey, first step is let's look at your values. And now we're going to look at the things you do in your life. And then you can see if they even align, right? And a lot of times they don't.
Yeah, we both grew up here, man, in America. And I got here Wednesday. one of the things that's super evident to me is the simple fact that there's a systemic issue with things such as lack of exercise, lack of education when it comes to nutrition. There's no obesity issue. And I know you do a lot of work with at-risk youths.
Yeah.
With that experience and the things I aforementioned, is this something that you think can even be fixed? And if it can be, how does it work? And would you say educate the parent first? Would you say work with the kid first?
It's tough, right? Because if you look at why they're at-risk youth, a lot of times it's because their environmental structure isn't good. So how are you just gonna fix that? So the parents are gonna be adverse to change. So if we look at some of the clients that we have, the parents are doing the same behaviors that the kids are in trouble for, right? So maybe they're adjudicated, they're on probation. The parents have the same problems. So, you can't really say educate the parents because they're not being much of parents. So all we have is the kid now. And so how can you reach that kid? And so what we've tried to develop is a program to where we can at least have the opposite end of the spectrum, people that are successful and that are happy and that are able to fulfill things that they want to fulfill, right? So if we get them into CrossFit and you look at the people at the CrossFit gym, and a lot of those people have done positive things, and at least they're in a positive environment for a couple hours a week, right? As opposed to who they were hanging out with before. So maybe they're banging, or they're selling drugs, or they're doing drugs, or whatever it is, committing crimes, doing graffiti. We're trying to remove them from that environment and put them in a more positive environment, and then show them that the skills that they can use to be successful in CrossFit or a wellness group or one of those things, that they can then apply to the rest of their life. And so if they want to be successful and they can use those same skills, they can be successful.
So this is a powerful thing that, correct me if I'm wrong. So you're saying with what you're doing in Arizona, you're using the CrossFit with the at-risk youth program that you work for to implement like discipline and systems into and more importantly, confidence into the young person.
And overcoming difficult situations.
And what sort of feedback are you getting from this?
A lot of good feedback. So we had kids who first come in and they don't smile and they're unhappy and they don't work out and they don't know how to eat right. And so then we get them into CrossFit, and then, we're about almost 3 months in now. And we have kids who are now in there, they're smiling, they're joking, they're happy, they're actually being kids, right? As opposed to being these shut down, like detached people, right? And so now what we also do is then we have a wellness group where we do like either CBT or DBT, behavioral therapy, and we work with the components of wellness, trying to address those through the group setting. And then I see a lot of them in the individual side. So then we have, individual therapy going on with wellness groups, with behavioral therapy, with then physical education and teaching them how to move themselves and how to socialize. And so if you look at all three of those aspects, we're covering all 8 dimensions of wellness. The only one we can't really completely cover is the financial side, because they're stuck under their parents, right? So
a lot of variables.
Yeah.
Do you even go into teaching, or is it in your spec to be able to even teach, like how to do taxes, how to set up a bank account, things like that? If when they get to that age of being able to open a bank account, or is that out of your kind of spectrum?
No, it's not really out. And so I work with somebody that's a financial consultant with some of my other clients, and she'll sit down with them and work with them. But on the child side, we don't really do a lot of that yet. But eventually that would be a goal, right? So not only would we want to link them up with the ability to create a budget and make sure they're meeting their needs, but we would also want to try to help them find gainful employment that suits their interests and abilities, right?
Yeah, and the abilities is the big part.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but this was before 2013. I think it was around 2011, where you were talking to me about wanting to help at-risk youths. And the reason for, because when we were younger, we both were.
Right.
Like, one of my favorite things about you as my friend and as a person, everything that you're doing, is that when you turn to me and you tell me that the people who know you over the last 10 years hear stories about how you were when we were younger, they don't believe it.
At all.
They get shocked about it. And I think that is, they say, be the way, be the example, because you were one of those kids, in the same sort of city, system, structure. All of the boxes were ticked for you not to be successful.
Yeah, I was on probation before I was 18, so I get it. Yeah.
Crazy, right? Because it was almost like this sort of recipe for not having an outlet to channel like what do you want to do when you're at that age? Like the benefits that these young people are having just from exercise and then also having a coach are tremendous. Now, are there any systems in place for the adults?
Not yet.
Or any mandatory, like rather than some like probate court sort of thing, is there anything that the courts have done in the state of Arizona or anywhere in the US to mandate some sort of fitness component into their sort of court probation?
No. That's why it's revolutionary, right?
Yeah.
So it's something that we've kind of identified, and we've gotten to the point to where we see the need for it, but nobody else has kind of seen it. And even when we first started it, they didn't really grasp the concept. And so when I go to staffings and the judges are there and we talk to them and we talk about what they're doing, they still, I don't think, fully grasp the implications of how this is impacting the kids, because the physical component's huge, right? So if you think of when you went to school or when I went to school, why did you even go to school?
I was told to go. I had to go to school.
And to play sports.
Yeah. Oh, you mean why did I go to school? That was the only reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Same.
I only got good grades, so because my parents threatened me because they said I couldn't play if I didn't get good grades. And it was easy.
Yep.
Yes.
And then that's the physical component I'm looking at. And so where did you build your teamwork and your social skills and a lot of these other things? Your physical capacity, your work ethic, your discipline came through sports and that physical component. And so when I look at it, a lot of these kids are in specialized schools because they can't go to regular schools, right? So they're in alternative schools and they don't have sports programs. So what do we do with them? We take them, we put them into CrossFit, which can be treated, it's like fitness as a sport, right? And then we can help them use that as the catalyst for the other things.
Yeah, I love what you're doing too. That adding to the CrossFit component of, there's a big misconception, and I don't want to speak for everyone, about when you hear the word CrossFit, there's kind of a stigma about a lot of reps, a lot of heavy weight, people are getting injured, and it's not fun. Why would I do that? It's crazy sort of thing. And then you start talking to me about, adding, because you're a yoga teacher as well. Just combining the two of the physicality component of being a human and also bringing that component into the CrossFit community of resetting and detaching. Talk a little bit about why you were inspired to add that in and where you see going forward that it can help people.
The yoga component. So, a lot of people struggle with mobility. A lot of people struggle with being able to breathe or take that deep breath or relax, connecting their breath with movement, connecting their mindfulness, right? Being present, doing what I'm doing. So locked in and engaged and not daydreaming and not thinking about all this other stuff. And so one of the biggest reasons I do it, obviously, is the flexibility portion, and retain flexibility over my lifespan, but also the mindfulness component and the breathing. And so, a lot of my relaxation and my calm and being able to act the way I do comes from being in those situations where I use yoga and I'm completely mindful. I can meditate during a practice. Like a lot of times I don't even have my eyes open. I'm just inside my headspace, I'm breathing and I'm sinking in, right? And so I think it's important to be able to not just do like physical exertion, but also to be able to bring it back, relax, recover. And so even though you're not sleeping, when you're meditating, that's another way of resetting and relaxing, right? And so you're getting your heart rate down. Mine will get down into like 48, 49 beats per minute when I'm doing like a yin yoga class, right? And so I'm bringing it back, I'm breathing, I'm resetting, I'm balancing my sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, and then I'm good to go after, right?
Yeah, something that I've been thinking about over the last, we'll say 8 or 9 months, is the fact that, because we haven't talked about this yet, everything that you being productive, all the little side things that you're working on, that's all centered with doing what you love, helping people, moving the body, teaching, coaching, inspiring. When you were a police officer this time last year in our hometown, what else were you doing?
Man, same thing. So I still did yoga, I still did CrossFit, I still did the meditation, I did jiu-jitsu, and then the rest of the day I was at work, right? So maybe on the social side, I kind of suffered a little bit because I have some close friends there, like Amber. But for the most part, just working a lot, right? So I worked a lot, and then most of my free time was devoted to self-improvement. And so, I would go do some stuff outside of that, but not a whole lot.
Yeah, we'll take it. Let's go back to like 2000, 2001. We're both 18, 19 years old. You're where you are right now. What would you tell little Joey? What advice would you give him though?
No.
You wouldn't give him anything?
No.
Why?
because then I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. He's got to do all those things that I did to get to where I'm at now. So if I tell him anything or change anything, he's not going to be in the same spot, right? It's going to totally change that whole path. And I'm completely happy where I'm at now, so I'm not going to change anything.
Was there anything though could you pick out a specific moment where you thought things weren't going to work out?
Oh, all the time. Like you always think things are going to work out,
but
right?
Isn't that crazy though? that in that same thought, things happened and you still wouldn't go back and give that kid advice because you know that those things needed to happen.
Absolutely.
And that's
and
where
overcoming that challenge, right?
In learning. And that's where a lot of people, I think, become fixated on the fact when things aren't working out. Mm-hmm. They just think that this is their life or this is permanent or that it even actually exists all the time.
Well, and I think you have to come back to why is it not working out? Is it not working out because you're just sitting in your room and wishing for it to happen? Or are you actually out there grinding and trying to make it happen? And I think a lot of times people are wishing for things to happen, but they're not taking the action to make it happen. And so that's just my opinion.
Taking action is a big part of this conversation. Making no excuses is a big part of this conversation. Execution equally is important. And also making sure that those things are congruent with what your passions are. Mm-hmm. Correct? So a couple things before I let you go with the podcast, the Human Equation, your show. Yep. Because when you were visiting me in Sydney, you didn't have a show. You didn't start it yet. No. And then I was episode 3.
Yep.
You've released 20. Share with us in those 20 episodes some valuable things that you've learned, not only about obviously the side of creating a show, but about yourself.
Well, a lot of it just comes down to trying to get the other people to share what's worked for them, because the main thing I can know is that I don't know everything. And so I know what I know, and I know what works for me, and I know strategies to use, but I don't always necessarily know what is best for anybody else. Actually, I don't ever know what's best for somebody else. And so the whole key is to try to understand people better. And so my whole goal is to try to understand what people need and then try to help them facilitate their own change to get there. And so I guess if anything that I learned, it's that everything is dependent, right? Everybody's dependent on one another. It's a big system. And so,
so
nobody's an island,
Connectivity.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, before I let you go, look into that camera. Let everyone know where we can follow you at. Social media, stay in touch with you regarding your brand that's continuously growing and how they can listen to your podcast.
Yeah, so the podcast is on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play. It's The Human Equation. It's spelled EQ8Ion. You can reach out on email if you want to get a hold of me, thehumaniquation@gmail.com. On Instagram, it's @thehumaniquation or @humanequationwellness. And that's all I got.
I'll put all those links in the show notes. And hey, man, every time we meet up and link up, whether it's 3 months or a year, it keeps growing and growing. So I can't wait till I see you again, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.